By morning, the man feared by the city would be feared for a different reason. She didn't plan to stop at his table. She told herself that twice as she crossed the marble floor, balancing a tray that suddenly felt heavier than it should. The restaurant was wrapped in quiet luxury, the kind where money softened every sound, where laughter stayed low and respectful, where even glasses seemed careful when they touched. She noticed him the moment she stepped onto the floor, not because he was loud. He wasn't, not because he demanded attention. He didn't, but because the air bent around him, like the room knew who it belonged to. She kept her eyes down like she always did, counting steps, rehearsing the same polite greeting she'd said 100 times that night, but something was wrong. Her fingers tingled, the edge of her vision blurred, the calm felt unnatural, stretched too thin, like silence right before something breaks. She adjusted her grip on the tray and felt it tremble. Why now? She had worked double shifts on worse days. She had smiled through pain before. She took one more step and the floor tilted. The tray slipped. A glass shattered. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. She tried to apologize, tried to steady herself, but her knees buckled before the words could leave her mouth. She fell forward, straight toward him, and he caught her. The reaction wasn't calculated. It wasn't ordered. His hand shot out before anyone else moved, strong fingers closing around her arm, pulling her back against him before her body could hit the floor. For half a second, no one breathed, because everyone recognized who she was touching, because no one touched him. The room froze in perfect stillness, conversations dying mid-sentence, chairs scraping softly as people instinctively leaned away. Her head rested against his chest, her breath uneven, her vision swimming. She felt the heat of him, solid and unyielding, and tried to pull back, panic rising too late. His grip tightened just enough to keep her upright, not rough, not gentle, controlled. As she shifted, her sleeve slid up her arm, exposing skin she had spent months hiding. Bruises bloomed beneath the light, dark ones, yellowing ones, some fresh enough to still carry faint purple edges, layered, overlapping. A history written into flesh. A nearby server inhaled sharply. Someone at the bar looked away too fast. His eyes dropped to her arm. He didn't react right away. That was what made it worse. His expression didn't change. No anger. No shock, just a subtle stillness, like something inside him had gone very quiet. He adjusted his hold, not to cover the bruises, but to see them more clearly. Her heart hammered. She tried to twist free, murmuring an apology, shame flooding her throat, but the words came out weak, barely sound. His gaze lifted slowly from her arm to her face, studying her like a puzzle that had just become interesting. The room waited. No one dared interrupt. No one dared move. She realized then that the fear in the room wasn't for her. It was for what he might decide next. His jaw tightened, not in rage, but in recognition, like he'd seen this pattern before. Somewhere behind him, a guard took a step forward, then stopped at a subtle lift of his fingers. She felt the shift instantly, the balance of the room changing, the rules rewriting themselves while she stood there shaking in his arms. He straightened slightly, anchoring her weight like she was nothing at all, and lifted his eyes to scan the room. The movement was slow, deliberate, and when he finally spoke, it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. One word left his mouth, and the entire restaurant shut down completely. The silence didn't break the way people expected it to. There was no shouting. No frantic calls for help. No scrambling staff rushing forward. Instead, the quiet thickened, pressed down on the room until it felt intentional. She sagged against him, her weight real now, undeniable, her breath shallow against his chest. Someone near the bar whispered her name, then stopped when one of his guards turned his head. His grip adjusted, firming, not because she was falling, but because he was looking again. The bruises. The spacing, the age of them, not the chaos of a single incident, but the discipline of repetition. That was when the room changed. His guards didn't rush, they didn't raise voices, they simply moved one step to the entrance and stood there, hands clasped behind his back. Another drifted toward the emergency exit, blocking it without drama. Two more took positions near the restrooms, eyes scanning, measuring reactions. People noticed, not all at once but enough. Phone screens dimmed. Mid-recordings were slipped back into pockets. Someone quietly set their glass down as if even sound might offend him. She stirred faintly, a small sound leaving her throat, and his arm tightened around her shoulders instinctively, not possessive, protective. The realization startled even him. He glanced down at her face, pale beneath the soft lights, lashes trembling like she was fighting to stay somewhere between worlds. He should have handed her off. He should have ordered medical staff. He should have stepped back, but he didn't. Why wasn't he calling for help like a normal man? because normal rules didn't apply here, because help brought questions, and questions brought witnesses. His eyes lifted and met the restaurant managers across the room. The man swallowed, nodded once, and moved quickly toward the staff station. He didn't ask permission. He didn't need to. A guard leaned in close, voice low enough that only he could hear, pulse weak but steady. No sign of drugs. Another guard murmured from the side, exits secured, cameras looping. People were still seated, frozen in the polite uncertainty of not knowing if they were allowed to leave. Some looked angry, some afraid, most looked relieved not to be the focus of his attention. She shifted again, her fingers curling weakly into his jacket as if searching for something solid. His jaw tightened. She didn't know who he was, she didn't know what this moment meant. And yet her body had chosen him anyway. That unsettled him more than the bruises. A staff member approached with a glass of water, hands shaking. He didn't take it. He shook his head once, sharp and final, and the man retreated immediately. His attention returned to her arm, her sleeve still pushed back, the marks unhidden under the bright lights. They weren't fresh, but they weren't healing either. Inconsistent colors told a timeline. Someone had been careful, not sloppy, not panicked. Deliberate. Are they afraid of her condition, or of what he's noticing? A medic entered quietly through the side door, summoned without announcement, wearing neutral colors and no visible insignia. She knelt beside them, reaching for the girl's wrist, checking her pulse. He didn't release her. He shifted just enough to allow access, eyes never leaving the medic's hands. No overdose. No trauma to the head. The medic hesitated, then glanced at the bruises too. He saw it then. The flicker of recognition, the tightening around her eyes, the professional mask slipping just enough. He felt it settled cold in his chest, the confirmation he hadn't asked for. The manager returned, voice tight, rehearsed. There's been a medical incident. We're sealing the venue temporarily for safety protocol. No one argued, because no one believed it was about safety. The medic leaned in closer and lowered her voice, choosing her words carefully. These don't align with a fall. She paused, then added, or a single impact. His eyes lifted slowly. That single sentence rearranged everything. He nodded once. To her. To the guards. To the room. No one moved. He adjusted his hold again, lifting the unconscious girl fully into his arms now, her head resting against his shoulder like she belonged there. The weight of her felt wrong, not heavy but significant. As he turned toward the private exit, his guards closed in around them, not shielding him from the room, but shielding the room from him. And as they moved, one truth settled uncomfortably into place. She hadn't fainted in front of him by accident. She had fallen into the worst possible witness, and he had noticed everything. Her awareness returns in pieces, not as a moment but as a series of intrusions. Pain comes first, dull and familiar, blooming under her skin like something she's learned to live around rather than fight. Then shame, sharper than the pain, the reflexive panic of realizing she has been seen. Not just fainting, not weakness, the marks, the history she works so hard to fold away every morning before she leaves her apartment. She tries to move and realizes she can't, not fully, not yet. The surface beneath her is soft, too soft for a hospital cot, and the air smells wrong, expensive and clean and not like disinfectant. That's when fear settles in real. She forces her eyes open a fraction, lashes fluttering, vision swimming, and the first thing she sees is light recessed into a ceiling she doesn't recognize. She isn't home, she isn't at work, she shouldn't be here. A voice reaches her before a face does, low and even, saying her name like it's not a question. She freezes. How does he know it? She didn't tell him. She didn't tell anyone at the restaurant. Her pulse stutters and the room tilts again, memory bleeding back in flashes. The tray in her hands, the quiet table, the sudden dark wave behind her eyes, arms catching her before the floor did. She squeezes her eyes shut, hoping if she doesn't look again, this place will vanish. But the voice comes back, closer now, unhurried. You're awake. That tone isn't relief. It's observation. She opens her eyes fully this time and sees him seated beside the bed, jacket removed, sleeves rolled back just enough to reveal strong forearms resting on his knees. He isn't looming. He isn't crowding her. He's simply there, occupying the space like it belongs to him. Her throat tightens. She's seen men like him before, not this one exactly, but the kind who don't need to raise their voices to be obeyed, the kind who notice things people assume are invisible. She tries to sit up and immediately regrets it. The room spins and a hand steadies her shoulder, firm but careful. She flinches before she can stop herself. The reaction is automatic, learned, humiliating. His hand pauses mid-motion, not withdrawing, not pressing further, just holding position as if recalibrating something inside himself. She hates that he noticed that too. Don't she starts, then stops when she realizes she doesn't know what she's about to ask. Don't touch me. Don't look at me. Don't ask questions. Her mouth closes. He watches her struggle, expression unreadable, eyes dark and intent. Without being cruel, you fainted, he says simply. You were dehydrated, exhausted. She almost laughs because it sounds like a lie that's meant to be kind. She pulls the sheet up instinctively, covering her arms, and his gaze follows the movement, not the destination. He already knows what's there. The silence stretches. She becomes acutely aware of everything, the thickness of the carpet beneath her bare feet, the quiet hum of a building that doesn't sleep, the presence of guards she can't see but can feel like pressure in the walls. She shouldn't be here. This isn't where girls like her wake up when they pass out at work. This is where stories end badly. She swallows. Where am I? He answers without hesitation. My residence. The word lands heavy. She turns her head sharply, heart racing, scanning the room for an exit, a door. Anything familiar. It's too calm. That's what scares her most. No shouting. No threats. No chaos. Just control. She swings her legs off the bed before she's ready, dizziness surging, and he stands in one smooth motion, too fast, too practiced. She stumbles and catches herself on the edge of the mattress, breath coming shallow. I need to leave, she says, the words brittle. He doesn't block her. He doesn't grab her. He simply looks at her and says, you can't, not yet. That's when something inside her fractures. Not anger, not panic. A quiet understanding that this moment isn't about her consent in the way she's used to. She straightens despite the tremor in her legs. You don't get to decide that. His eyes flicker, just briefly, as if she said something interesting rather than offensive. I already did, he replies. She laughs then, short and humorless. You don't even know me. His gaze sharpens. I know where you live, he says, not as a threat, but as a fact. I know the name you used at work isn't the one on your lease. I know you haven't been to a doctor in 2 years, and I know those bruises aren't from falling downstairs. Her breath leaves her in a rush. She feels exposed in a way that has nothing to do with skin. This isn't kindness, this isn't rescue, this is attention, the kind that locks onto you and doesn't let go. She wraps her arms around herself, suddenly cold, and meets his eyes for the first time without flinching. Why? She asks, because it's the only question that matters now. He studies her for a long moment before answering. Because you collapsed in front of me, he says softly, and because you didn't want anyone to notice. But I did. The truth settles heavy and inescapable. She didn't choose him, but she did choose where to fall, and now she understands the danger isn't that he saved her. It's that he saw her at all. He doesn't change his tone when he speaks again, and that's what unsettles her most. No raised voice. No threat. No urgency. Just a quiet certainty that makes every word sound final. He asks where she was standing when she first felt dizzy, not to help her remember but to confirm something he already knows. She answers carefully, choosing words like they might explode if mishandled, and every response feels weighed, measured, accepted or dismissed without comment. When he asks how long she's worked here, it isn't curiosity, it's verification. When he asks who schedules her shifts, it feels like a test she doesn't know she's taking. She starts to realize that this conversation isn't about her collapse at all. It's about what intersected with him because of it. She notices a man near the bar pretending to scroll through his phone, posture stiff, attention too controlled. Her eyes linger for half a second too long. She shouldn't have looked. She feels it instantly, the shift in the air, like a held breath. The boss follows her gaze without turning his head, eyes cutting sideways, locking onto the man with surgical precision. There's no signal. She doesn't see him nod or gesture, but somewhere behind her, footsteps move. The man by the bar looks up once, just once, and the fear on his face is raw and unmistakable. He opens his mouth as if to speak, then closes it, swallowing hard. 2 guards appear beside him, hands light on his arms, almost polite. They guide him away, not rushed, not rough. The music doesn't stop. No one screams. No one even looks directly at them. The man disappears through a side door and the room swallows the absence like it never existed. Her stomach twists. This frightens her more than shouting ever could. She's lived through loud danger. She knows how to survive violence, but this quiet removal, this efficiency, tells her something deeper about the man standing a few feet away from her. He doesn't need chaos. He controls it. He turns back to her, expression unchanged, as if no interruption occurred. Did he touch you tonight? He asks. The question is calm, almost detached. She blinks. What? Before you fell, He clarifies, did anyone touch you? Her heart pounds. She thinks of hands brushing past her in crowded spaces, of moments she dismissed because they felt insignificant. Maybe, she says, I don't know. He studies her face, then nods slowly. That's honest enough. Another pause, deliberate this time. When he speaks, his voice lowers. Not softer, heavier. Someone followed you here. He says it like a statement, not a theory. She shakes her head immediately. No, that's not. You didn't see them. He interrupts gently, because they weren't watching you, they were watching me. The words hit harder than any accusation. She inhales sharply, the room tilting as realization sinks in. They didn't choose this place randomly, they chose you because you were invisible. He takes a step closer now, not threatening, but impossible to ignore. You move freely, you blend. You don't belong to anyone, that makes you useful. She feels suddenly exposed, like her skin has been peeled back. She never thought of herself as useful, she thought of herself as careful. You collapsed where you did because the timing mattered. He continues, not because you were weak. Someone wanted you near me, wanted contact, wanted confusion. She swallows. So the bruises. He nods once. That's when his expression finally changes. Not anger, not rage, but something colder, sharper. As if a final piece has slid into place. They're not random. He says. They're messages. She stares at him, disbelief creeping in. Messages for who? His gaze doesn't leave hers. For me. The room seems to contract around them, the walls closing in as the weight of that admission settles. She feels suddenly very small, very seen, and very trapped by a truth she never asked to touch. You were marked long before tonight. He continues quietly. Someone was shaping you into a signal, soft enough to stay unnoticed, strong enough to endure. She shakes her head, tears threatening. I don't even know these people. That doesn't matter, he replies. What matters is that they knew you would cross my path. She laughs once, hollow. That's insane. He doesn't smile. It's strategy. His eyes flick briefly toward the door where the man vanished, then back to her. This wasn't an attempt on my life, this was a message sent through your body. She feels sick, the realization settling like poison. She wraps her arms around herself, suddenly aware that every ache she ignored carried meaning. She was never just hurt, she was being spoken through. He straightens, authority settling back into his posture like a weapon. She can't see. You're not safe because you collapsed. He says. You're alive because you did it in front of me. She meets his gaze, fear and something else tangling in her chest. Then what happens now? He holds her eyes, unwavering. Now, he says evenly, we answer the message. The car doors close with a sound that is too soft to be comforting, a sealed click that tells her something final has happened without asking her permission. The city outside smears into streaks of light as the vehicle pulls away, tinted glass turning familiar streets into something distant and unreachable. She shifts on the leather seat, heart hammering, and for the first time since collapsing, panic claws up her throat. This doesn't feel like rescue. It feels like removal. She reaches for the handle on instinct, not to escape yet, just to test it, and it doesn't move. The lock wasn't dramatic. It was expected. Why does that make it worse? She looks at him, seated across from her, posture relaxed, gaze angled toward the window as if nothing about this moment requires explanation. Are you taking me somewhere? She asks, hating the tremor in her voice. He doesn't answer immediately, and the silence stretches just long enough to make her feel foolish for asking. You're already somewhere. He says finally. Safe. That word lands wrong. She laughs under her breath, sharp and humorless. This is safe. He turns his head then, eyes steady, not offended, not defensive. Safer than where you were. She shakes her head, frustration bubbling over. I didn't agree to this. You didn't have to, he replies calmly, as if consent is a luxury reserved for different circumstances. She shifts forward, anger briefly overtaking fear. Stop the card. He doesn't look at the driver. He doesn't raise his voice. He simply says, no, and the car keeps moving. That's when she understands the difference between force and authority. No hands grab her. No threats are spoken, and yet every person in this vehicle obeys him without question. The realization tightens around her chest like a vice. She slumps back against the seat, arms folding in on themselves, trying to make herself smaller. When she speaks again, her voice is quieter. Where are we going? He doesn't answer that either, not because he didn't hear her, but because the question doesn't matter to him yet. She watches his reflection in the glass, notices how his attention keeps drifting, not to her, but to patterns outside, intersections, passing vehicles, shadows that mean nothing to her and everything to him. Why is he studying the world instead of the girl he just pulled out of The car slows eventually, turning through a private gate that slides open without pause, into a compound that feels less like a home and more like a controlled environment. The engine cuts, she doesn't move at first, the door opens on its own, a guard standing silently beside it. She looks at him, then back at the boss. You said safe, she mutters. This feels like a cage. He steps out and turns back to her, offering a hand she doesn't take. Safety often does, he says. She exits the car on her own terms, shoes clicking against stone, every step echoing too loudly in the open space. She's guided inside, not touched, not rushed, but never alone. The building is quiet in a way that feels deliberate, like sound itself has been trained to behave. She's led into a room with soft lighting, neutral colors, nothing sharp, nothing threatening, and yet she's never felt more exposed. She turns on him the moment the door closes behind them, words spilling out now that the shock is wearing off. You can't just take people, you can't lock them in cars and expect them to. He raises a hand, not to silence her, but to pause her, and somehow it works. I didn't take you, he says evenly. I removed you from a message that was still being written. She scoffs. That's not your decision to make. It became my decision the moment your body was used to speak to me. His gaze sharpens, not at her anger, but at the truth underneath it. She falters, suddenly exhausted. I just want to go home. The word home hangs between them. Fragile. He studies her for a moment, then turns slightly, addressing someone unseen outside the room. Find the financial trail connected to her injuries. Everything. No delays. Her stomach drops. What injuries? He looks back at her. You think bruises like yours happen without funding? Her pulse spikes. You already know, she whispers. He doesn't deny it. Minutes later, a tablet is placed in his hand. He scans the screen, eyes moving quickly, expression unreadable. She watches his face, trying to find comfort there, but finding only focus. Then something shifts, his jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. She leans forward despite herself. What? He lifts his eyes to hers, and for the first time since this began, there's something dangerous there. Not rage, disappointment. The money used to hurt you, he says quietly. It came from one of my accounts. The room seems to tilt. She feels cold all over. That doesn't make sense. She didn't know who hurt her truly worked for. She didn't know how deep the rot went. She only knows that someone inside his world paid for her pain, and now she's standing in the center of it. She sits on the edge of the bed he put her on, fingers knotted together so tightly her knuckles ache, staring at the floor like it might give her answers if she looks long enough. The room is quiet again, but not empty. He's there, leaning against the far wall, arms folded, watching without pressing, without pretending this is casual. She can feel his attention like weight on her skin. Say what you want to say, he tells her calmly, as if giving permission instead of an order. She swallows. The silence stretches. Why is it harder to speak now than it was to collapse in front of strangers? Because now she knows he's listening. She exhales slowly. Not everything, she says before she can stop herself. His brow lifts slightly. Not everything, he repeats. She nods, ashamed of the instinct to protect secrets that have only ever hurt her. If I say everything, people die. He studies her for a long moment, then nods once. That tells me enough. She laughs weakly. That's not comforting. She wasn't expecting comfort. She starts with the easy parts, the long hours, the cash payments, the rules she learned without being told. Don't be late. Don't ask questions. Don't look injured. She talks about how bruises fade faster if you rotate where they land, how sleeps become habits, how silence becomes muscle memory. He doesn't interrupt, but she notices the way his jaw tightens when she describes patterns, the timing, the escalation. The way money always appears just before the damage worsens. It wasn't random, she says quietly. It was scheduled. That's when he straightens almost imperceptibly, attention sharpening. Scheduled abuse isn't chaos. It's structured. He knows structure. Who arranged it? He asks softly. She shakes her head too quickly. I can't say. The answer costs more than you think. His gaze doesn't leave her face, but his expression changes, not to anger, but to recognition. He's seen this before, the reluctance the math victims do in their heads, weighing pain against survival. He crouches in front of her, not close enough to touch, but close enough that she can't look away. You're protecting someone who hurt you, he says, not out of loyalty, out of fear. She bites her lip. She doesn't deny it. The man who did this, she says slowly, choosing every word like it might explode. He doesn't get touched. Her voice shakes on the last word. Untouchable. That word lands differently for him. She sees it in the faint curve of his mouth, not amused, not cruel, but almost curious. Why are you smiling? She asks, panic rising. He straightens to his full height. Untouchable is a story people tell to survive. He says quietly, not a fact, that terrifies her more than any threat she's ever heard. You don't understand. She whispers. He does things to people. He makes examples. He's protected. He turns away briefly, as if considering something far heavier than her fear, then looks back at her with eyes that feel older than they did an hour ago. I understand perfectly. He steps to the table, taps the screen once, and images appear: financial trees, movement logs, names she doesn't recognize, but he clearly does. This isn't one man, he continues, this is a system, and systems are fragile. She stands abruptly. No, you can't fix this. You'll make it worse. His gaze snaps to her, sharp now, steel beneath calm. I didn't say fix. She wraps her arms around herself, voice cracking. I survived by staying invisible. If you move, they'll notice me. He walks back to her slowly, stopping just short of her space. They already noticed you. The difference is now I have too. She shakes her head, tears finally spilling. This isn't protection, she chokes. This is war. He doesn't deny it, but he doesn't soften either. War doesn't care about what we want, he says. It cares about what we allow. She looks up at him through tears. What happens to me if you do this? He considers her carefully before answering. You don't disappear. You don't get comfort. You don't get to pretend it never happened. She swallows. Then what do I get? Consequences. He says quietly, real ones, for everyone involved. The word settles heavy in her chest. She doesn't know whether to be relieved or afraid. He straightens, already turning away, issuing instructions to someone outside the room, his voice calm, precise, unstoppable. She realizes then that he's decided. Untouchable is no longer a myth, and whatever comes next won't be gentle. It will be exact. The city doesn't explode. It tightens. Meetings are cancelled without explanation. Reservations vanish. Private rooms go dark. People who once moved loudly now move carefully, checking reflections in glass, lowering their voices mid-sentence. She feels it before she sees it, like pressure in the air, like the night holding its breath. They move her again before sunrise, not hurried, not frantic, which somehow makes it worse. The car windows are tinted darker this time. The driver doesn't speak. She watches familiar streets pass by and realizes how small her world has always been. She thought danger announced itself. She thought violence was loud, but this feels different. This feels organized. Inside the building they take her to, phones buzz constantly, then stop all at once. Why would silence spread faster than panic? He stands near a window, watching the city like it's a board he's already studied. People are reacting, he says quietly. She doesn't ask who. People always means power. She sits, hugging her knees, trying to make herself smaller, when one of the guards hesitates before handing him a tablet. That hesitation tells her more than the screen ever could. He scrolls once. His expression doesn't change, but the room does. The temperature drops. He turns the screen toward her, not gently, not cruelly, just honestly. It's her face, not a photo she recognizes, not from work, not from her phone. It's from the night before, from the moment she collapsed, from the second his hands caught her. The angle is bad, the lighting worse, but it's unmistakably her. This is already out there, he says calmly. Where? She asks, throat dry. Places you don't want to exist. She feels the ground shift beneath her feet. I didn't do anything. She knows how childish it sounds. The truth doesn't protect you, he replies. Visibility does. She stares at the image, heart racing. Who would want this? He watches her carefully before answering. Someone who wants leverage, someone who wants to see how far I'll go. She laughs once, hollow. You think this is about you? He doesn't smile. This is about what happens when someone touches something I'm paying attention to. The word something makes her flinch. She opens her mouth to protest, but the room erupts softly, not shouting orders, messages sliding across screens, names she doesn't know being spoken with urgency. She hears a word repeated enough times to recognize it even without context. Bounty. The tablet comes back to her, this time showing text. She doesn't read everything. She doesn't need to. The number alone makes her stomach drop. That's for me? She whispers. He nods once. Public. That's when fear truly lands. Not the bruises, not the stalking, not even the collapse, but the realization that strangers now have a price for her existence. She backs away instinctively. They'll come. She doesn't need to explain. He knows. They already are. She presses her hands to her face. This is my fault. I shouldn't have been there. He steps closer, voice firm. This isn't consequence. That was already happening. This is exposure. She looks up at him, eyes wild, then hide. Make me disappear. His gaze softens just enough to feel dangerous. If you run, you become prey. If you vanish, someone else gets hurt to pull you back. She shakes her head. I can't live like this. You won't live at all if you move without protection. She laughs again. Broken, you call this protection? Her phone buzzes before he can answer. She doesn't remember anyone having it. He nods for her to look. She opens the message with shaking fingers. It's short. I see you. The sender has no name. She drops the phone like it burned her. She's watching the door now. Every sound too loud, every pause too quiet. He signals someone without turning his head. The guards shift positions subtly. She realizes then that the building has already changed since she arrived. More men, more exits sealed, more eyes. She feels like a storm center, everything rotating around her presence. I never asked for this, she says softly. More to herself than him. He answers anyway. No one ever does. She looks at the screen again at her own face, already stripped of anonymity. So what am I now? She asks. His voice is steady, not bait, not a secret. A line they crossed. She swallows hard. If I try to leave, she says slowly, testing the idea out loud, I won't make it far. He doesn't lie. No, she closes her eyes. The weight of the city pressing in on her chest. Running would be loud, running would be desperate, running would get her killed faster than staying. When she opens her eyes again, there's something different there. Not courage, not acceptance, clarity. She looks at him. Then staying means this gets worse before it gets better. He nods. It always does. She exhales slowly. Then don't let them take me. She doesn't beg, she doesn't threaten, she just states it. He holds her gaze, something dark and resolute settling into place. They already tried. She packs quietly like the house might wake up if she moves too fast. She doesn't take much, not because she doesn't own things but because ownership feels irrelevant now. Clothes don't matter, money won't help. ID can be burned. She tells herself distance will dissolve attention the way fog thins with morning, that if she's gone before anyone notices, the city will exhale and forget her name. She doesn't leave a note. She doesn't look for him. She moves when the hall is empty, when the cameras blink on their usual rhythm, when the guards rotate posts like clockwork. She's memorized without meaning to. She slips through a service corridor she learned by accident, counting steps, avoiding light. The door opens with a soft mechanical sigh and for 3 seconds the night feels honest. Cold air on her face, space, sound, not orders, not whispers, not eyes tracking her. She takes 2 steps onto the pavement and thinks maybe she was wrong about how tightly the world had closed. Maybe fear exaggerated the danger. Maybe this is all it takes. Then she notices the silence. The street is too empty for this hour. No engines. No distant laughter. No footsteps. She turns once, just enough to see a shadow detach itself from another shadow, and then hands are on her arms, hard and practiced, pulling her backward. The world narrows to pressure and breath. She tries to scream but a palm seals her mouth. Another twists her wrist just enough to make her knees buckle. She tastes iron and realizes she bit her lip in panic. Someone whispers her name like they've practiced it, like saying it is permission. She kicks blindly, heel striking nothing. She's lifted, dragged, her feet scraping the ground as the door slams shut behind her and the night swallows the sound. She thinks of him then, not because she expects rescue but because anger is easier than fear. She thinks of his calm voice, his rules, his certainty, and hates that she might have been safer if she'd stayed exactly where she was. She hears another sound through the rush in her ears. Tires, brakes. A voice cutting through the dark sharp enough to fracture it. Her name again, but this time it isn't whispered. It's commanded. The hands on her loosen for half a heartbeat. That's all it takes. The space explodes into movement. Shadows become bodies, bodies become obstacles. She's dropped and the ground slams into her shoulder, pain blooming bright and immediate. She curls instinctively, protecting her head, expecting more hands, more blows, but they don't come. There's shouting now, short and precise, words she doesn't understand but feels in her bones. She dares to look up just as someone is thrown hard enough to skid across concrete and stop at her feet. She scrambles back, heart pounding, trying to get distance from everything at once. She sees him then, standing at the edge of the street like he stepped out of the night itself. His coat is open, his face unreadable, his eyes fixed on the scene with a stillness that feels heavier than violence. His men move around him like a tide, controlled, efficient, already sealing the space. She opens her mouth to speak but nothing comes out. He doesn't look at her right away. He looks at the man on the ground, the one who isn't moving quite right, the one whose blood is spreading in a dark, slow shape across the pavement. She realizes then it isn't hers. She touches her face, her arms, checking in disbelief. She's shaking but intact. The blood belongs to someone else. The realization hits harder than Relief. He goes very still, not frozen, not shocked, still like a decision settling into place. She's seen anger before. She's seen fear. This is neither. He crouches near the body, studies the wound, the angle, the way the others stand back without being told. When he finally looks at her, something in his expression has changed. It isn't concerned. It isn't reassurance. It's resolve. This didn't need to happen, she says hoarsely, though she isn't sure who she's talking to. He rises smoothly, closing the distance between them until she has to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You left, he says quietly, not accusing, factual. She swallows. I was trying to protect you. That earns the smallest reaction. A tightening at the corner of his mouth. There is no protecting me from this, he says. There is only choosing where you stand. She looks past him at the body again, at the cost written plainly in blood on the ground. I didn't think they'd find me that fast, he answers without hesitation. They didn't find you, they followed you. She feels the weight of that truth sink into her chest. She was never invisible, she was escorted. She looks at him, at the men, at the closed street, and understands something she's been avoiding. Running didn't remove her from the danger. It delivered it. He turns away, already issuing quiet instructions, already moving the world back into order. She stays where she is, legs weak, watching the night swallow the evidence. She realizes the false safety she believed in has collapsed completely. There is no outside to step into. There is only the space beside him, or the space where blood dries on pavement. She doesn't know which is worse. She only knows she can't pretend anymore. He doesn't raise his voice after that night. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't punish in public. What he does instead is quieter. And that's what changes everything. She notices it first in the absence of things, calls that stop coming, meetings that are cancelled without explanation, names she heard whispered the day before that no one will say now. She asks once what he's doing. He answers honestly. I'm closing doors. The city responds like it understands the language of consequence. Vehicles reroute without traffic reports, security details double without announcement. People who once looked at her too long now look away entirely. She realizes efficiency is colder than rage because rage ends, efficiency doesn't. She's kept close, not confined but never alone, not guarded like a prisoner, but positioned like something valuable. She watches him work from the edges of rooms, from behind glass, from seats no one else is offered. He doesn't ask for her opinion. He doesn't explain himself unless she asks directly, and when she does, he never lies. That honesty costs her more than silence. She sees how a name spoken once can erase another. She sees how a nod replaces an argument. She sees how protection is built from subtraction, people removed, problems deleted, options narrowed. She starts to understand that the bruises on her body were chaotic violence. What he does now is controlled, and that makes it worse. The first time he brings her into a room full of people who know exactly who he is, the shift is immediate. Conversations fracture, eyes track her before they look away. She feels the weight of recognition settle like a hand between her shoulders. She isn't introduced. He doesn't need to say anything. Her presence is the message. She leans toward him and asks why they're staring. Because they're counting. He replies, counting what? How many rules I'm willing to break for you? That lands heavier than any threat. She notices then that no one smiles, not at her, not at him, not even at jokes made out of habit. The air is too tight for humor. He moves through the room with calm authority, and she realizes something unsettling. He isn't performing power. He's correcting balance. When someone approaches too closely, a single look from him is enough. When another dares to ask her a question directly, the answer comes from him instead. She should feel erased. Instead, she feels claimed. The word forms in her mind before she can stop it. She hates how accurate it is. She confronts him later, when they're alone. When the walls feel closer than usual. You're turning me into a symbol, she says. He doesn't deny it. Symbols are harder to remove. That isn't protection, she snaps. That's ownership. He studies her for a long moment. Ownership implies consent, he says. This is exposure. Then why does it feel like I'm suffocating? Because you can see it now. The truth is never comfortable. She realizes then that he isn't becoming something new. This is who he's always been. She just triggered the version of him that doesn't pretend otherwise. She hears it before she sees it. The shift in tone, the subtle ripple that passes through the house, the way people straighten without being told. He takes a call, listens without interruption, then ends it without comment. She knows something irreversible has just occurred. What? She asks. They've accepted the terms. Accepted what? That you're no longer a question. He says it like a conclusion, not a victory. That night, he brings her with him again. This time there's no pretense of normalcy. The room is smaller, the faces are sharper, the respect is edged with fear. When he places a hand at her back, It isn't possessive. It's declarative. The room reacts instantly, not with shock. With understanding. She feels it then, the final door closing, the invisible line she can no longer step back across. She belongs to the equation now. When someone finally dares to say her name aloud, the silence that follows is immediate. He doesn't correct them. He lets it stand, and in that moment, she understands the turn he's taken. Her safety now isn't private. It's policy. It's precedent. It's provocation. She pulls him aside afterward and asks the question she's been avoiding. What happens to me when this ends? He doesn't soften his answer. It doesn't end. Not cleanly. Not for you. She laughs once. Hollow. So that's it. I'm trapped either way. He looks at her, not unkindly. Freedom was gone the moment they noticed you. You just see the walls now. She steps back, heart heavy, finally understanding the cost of what he's built around her. She isn't collateral. She's leverage. She's warning. She's proof. And as much as she resents him for it, she knows the truth that frightens her most. She feels safer standing beside the man they created than she ever did trying to run from him. By morning the city behaves as if nothing unusual happened. The restaurants open, the traffic resumes, the headlines choose safer stories, and yet the absence is unmistakable because it's too precise. The man who hurt her is gone, not arrested, not exposed, not mourned, erased so completely that even his digital footprints collapse into error messages. She learns this not from a confession but from silence. Her phone no longer vibrates with the low hum of fear. No unknown numbers. No half-breathed threats. No presence lurking just beyond her sight. The relief should feel like victory. So why does it feel like wait? She wakes in a room she didn't choose but now recognizes as hers. The light is filtered through glass designed to soften the world. The bruises on her body have been treated with care that borders on reverence. She flexes her fingers and realizes for the first time in months nothing hurts immediately. That should be everything, and yet her chest tightens because safety arrived, carrying a price she never negotiated. He isn't in the room when she wakes. She expects that part of him now, the distance. He gives it when it matters most. She finds him later standing by the fire pit outside watching paper curl into ash. Documents, photographs, accounts, names. She knows what they are without asking. The last proof, the kind of proof that could free her if the world were fair. The kind that would destroy him if it ever surfaced. She asks quietly what he's burning. He answers without looking. Escape routes. She could stop him. She knows that. She could say her name out loud and he would pause. She could ask him to hand it over and he would hesitate. That knowledge settles between them like a held breath, but she doesn't move. She doesn't speak. She watches the evidence that defined her suffering turn to smoke and drift into nothing, and only when the fire dies does she understand why she stayed silent. Because freedom built on his destruction wouldn't be freedom. It would be another kind of sentence. He turns to her then, not triumphant, not apologetic, certain. It's done, he says. She nods. She doesn't thank him, that would be too simple. Instead she asks the question she's been avoiding. What am I now? He considers her the way one considers a city after a storm, standing, inhabited, changed. You're safe, he says. That isn't an answer. It's a boundary. She presses further. What happens next? He meets her gaze fully this time. No lies. No softness. You live. She waits for the rest. He doesn't add it. That's the truth. She walks past him and sits on the edge of the stone bench feeling the morning air touch skin that no longer flinches. He stands a respectful distance away. The space between them is deliberate. He knows better than to crowd her now. She realizes something unsettling. She could leave, not physically, not without consequence, but she could ask and he would make it possible. Not easy, not clean, but possible. That is the final cruelty of his protection. It leaves choice intact while poisoning every option. She thinks of the man she was before the bruises, before the fear became routine, before collapsing in public felt safer than standing upright alone. That woman would have run. She would have clung to the idea of escape like oxygen. This woman understands something else now, that some rescues aren't exits, they're exchanges. She looks at him and sees the cost etched into his restraint. He didn't do this out of kindness. He did it because once he saw the pattern he couldn't unsee it. Once he noticed the marks he couldn't ignore the message they were meant to send. This was never about saving her. This was about refusing to let someone else write the ending. She finally speaks. You didn't have to do all this. He answers quietly. Someone did. She understands then what binds them. It isn't romance. It isn't gratitude. It's recognition. They are both products of attention they didn't ask for and violence that mistook them for objects. The city will never know what vanished overnight. The City will never know what was traded to make that disappearance permanent. That anonymity is part of the punishment. She stands and feels steady for the first time in a long while. He watches her without stepping in, without reaching out. She realizes that despite everything he has not touched her since the night she fell, not once, not even when he could have. That restraint is his final confession. She breathes in the morning and accepts the truth settling into her bones. She fainted in front of a man the city feared. He caught her before she hit the ground, and by morning she learned the truth. Some men don't save you to let you go, they save you so no one else ever touches you again.